Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. Today we have a review of the new Lo Truglio movie. You know him from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or Role Models, or Superbad. He's primarily known as a comedian. He made a movie called Outpost, which is not a comedy. So I was interested to see what a comedic actor would do writing and directing a dramatic thriller-style movie. Outpost follows Kate, a woman who goes through a pretty horrific tragedy in the beginning, and decides to become a fire tower warden, I guess would be the term, watching over a mountain range in Idaho. It's 3 months of isolation as she has to stay in this fire tower and look for smoke signaling a forest fire in a dry season, called into the office. You know, they go into her job in enough detail that you get to know what's going on without it being a whole class in what these fire wardens do. It was very interesting following the character's journey because while she went through was very horrific, I understand her need for isolation, to get away from it all. The movie does a great job of taking her in a very realistic, pretty mundane situation and then hyping it up where she goes into her mind and the fear takes over. It happens a few times and it's kind of jarring, but it's supposed to be because that's very jarring for her. It really adds a lot to the story, and the way that it blends the realism of the mundane into the extremes of what's going on in her head. The people around her, most of them don't know what happened, and the ones who do don't know that this is going on inside of her head. So you kind of have this disconnect from people as it is. So for her to spend 3 months out in the mountains by herself actually makes a lot of sense. The part of it that didn't make sense to me was 3 months of isolation is tough on a very healthy brain. There's a lot of side and supporting characters in this, a lot of familiar faces, and we'll do a rundown of the standout cast members in a little bit. This was also a very interesting part because they had such limited screen time relatively to Kate, who shoulders the whole thing and is in virtually every scene, but they really make an impact, and furthermore, they make an impact on Kate's life. It's really nice to see the ones who are at bat for her, the ones who are just kind of like, you're not cut out for this, the ones who are doubting her, the ones who encourage her, maybe even ways they shouldn't be encouraging her. It's a very nice blend of these people around her, all played very real, even for some of the less real aspects of the movie. I don't want to say too much and give it away. This is a spoiler-free review, but as the story starts to turn and take shape and we move towards the ultimate climax, you realize that some of these characters are not really working in Kate's best interest, even though that's what she believes at the time. I previously mentioned the cast being very strong and supporting. Beth Dover is the lead. She plays Kate. She is in virtually every scene of the movie. She shoulders the emotional content of the story. She drives the actual story forward. She's kind of the one who went through it all. She's very good in this. I recognize her from Orange is the New Black. She's actually done a lot of comedies as well. It was interesting to see a comedic actor do such a dramatic role, but I think if you're good at one, you're good at the other, because those two emotions, at least in movies, seem to be kind of parallels or next door neighbors. It's a really interesting turn. I think it helped a little bit that I wasn't super familiar with her work. If I had seen her in 9 seasons of something, just, you know, yucking it up, and to do this, it would have been probably not more jarring, but it would have taken me a little bit more time to get on board. She does such a fantastic job that it could have been somebody, you know, she could have done every season of Parks and Rec as the most cartoonish character in that already live-action cartoon kind of show, and I mean that as a compliment, and I still would have bought her performance in this. Dallas Roberts and Otto Asando, I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. Dallas was in The Walking Dead, very good in that. I had to look up Otto, but he was actually in Tales from the Loop, which is an Amazon show that I covered on the channel a little while ago. They played the other Rangers. They're kind of in the main office that Kate would be reporting to. They were not foils, not quite antagonists, and there's this very cool, very intriguing side story done of Otto's character's own background, where he didn't want her to be making the same mistakes he did. He mentions a couple times that he's just getting the community's goodwill back on the Rangers' side. They don't delve a lot into it, but it doesn't feel like a loose thread. It just feels like a more complete world, which was really, really cool to get into. Dallas played kind of a crappy guy in a lot of ways. I don't think he was a bad guy. I think he just didn't really care. He didn't really care about Kate. He didn't really care about the job. He was just kind of making his way through life. He was just kind of doing his day-by-day thing. So again, not an antagonist, but the character was important because it sets up Kate's reaction and further reactions to things as the plot progresses, and especially as it comes to a climax. Speaking of characters who are very important to the plot progression, very important to the climax, not the nicest people in the world, but super crucial for the plot, Dylan Baker plays Reggie. Dylan Baker shows up in a lot of things, and he's so good in this kind of role where he has this weight and gravity to him, even though he's kind of a skinnier, older guy. Like he's not physically imposing, but he's just so good at kind of being sleazy. I know that's a horrible word to describe something good as, but he just really nails it. His turn in this is no exception. He's absolutely outstanding. When it comes to the plot, I feel like I'm vague talking around things. This is spoiler-free. Discovering it along with Kate is part of the journey, and discovering things that Kate's not seeing but you as the audience and outsider looking in are is super important to the enjoyment of this movie. So I really want to leave that for you to discover because it is excellent when it happens. It goes to a higher level than I ever thought it would, but it doesn't break the movie and it doesn't feel unrealistic. It goes in a direction I really didn't think it would. I thought this was going to be a fairly predictable story. I knew what Kate's whole journey was going to be, and it would be a solid effort for both actor and writer-director, and it exceeded those expectations and then some. Joe Lo Truglio, I was curious in the beginning, could a guy who I know as a comedic actor write and direct a solid thriller drama? Absolutely he could. He pulled it off. I didn't go do a deep dive to see if he had done anything like this in the past. I don't know what his roots are. For all I know, he started out doing dramas like this and kind of fell into comedy, not the other way around. But whatever the result, he really knocked it out of the park with Outpost, and I'd actually like to see more from him in this regard. The script is realistic. It's exciting. It keeps you guessing. It keeps you on your toes. It is a lot of times one woman in the mountains or one woman talking to one character in kind of remote locations, and it never feels like they didn't have the budget or they didn't have the means to get more. It's what the story is, and the script serves the story serves the script, and even more importantly, the visuals serve both. In this world of 4K on our phones and getting a 80-inch screen in your living room is not unheard of. It's actually pretty easy, relatively affordable to get a decent quality screen in your house. I love it when movies take advantage of that and really go for the visuals. This is in the Idaho mountain ranges. I'm unfamiliar with the Idaho mountain ranges. I live near the Adirondack Mountains, and it could have been there. The mountains are big, they're vast, they're beautiful, and the movie does a great job of showing them off. It really uses the isolation when it needs to. It uses the hustle and bustle of city life when it needs to. And actually that kind of leads me into the audio, because those things are not just visual cues, but audio cues. There are large moments of this movie where Kate is surrounded by silence, but it never feels empty. It never feels like it's taking too long to get to the next thing, or it's stretching out moments to add to the runtime. It doesn't do any of that. But it uses the silence as a contrast to the craziness. When you get glimpses of the tragedy that happened to Kate in the past, or tragedies as it turns out, those scenes are often jarring and sharp and loud and abrasive, completely intended and disturbing, but not pushing that envelope too far. There's no gross outs, there's no glorification of it. It just has this perfectly fine balance between character and actor and writing and visual and audio. And I basically just described all the elements of the movie. It really is firing on all cylinders all the way through. If it's not abundantly clear by now, Outpost is an absolute recommend from me. It has a limited theatrical run going on right now. It's also on VOD. Put it on your weekend watch list. Get out to the theater and see it if you're in an area that's showing it. Huge thanks to Gravitas Ventures for sending us the screener over, and huge congratulations to Joe Lo Truglio and the whole cast crew involved with it. They really pulled off something great in the indie film world. They really